Oi! Hello! Welcome! Let's go! Alright, tonight we're doing a Britpop stream, right? Yo, what's up, y'all? Welcome. Hope everybody's doing alright. Tonight we're doing Britpop. We're mostly centering on, this is our music analysis, lyrics, stream number 3, our little mini-series here. And and I got a bunch of stuff on the way here. So shouts out to everybody out here. Shouts out to Kotel, Church of the Eternal Logos, DPH over there. That was a brilliant stream on crystals, on the crystals, right? Oi, that was a brilliant stream on the crystals. You got your globby wobbles and your crystals. But tonight we're in Northern England, right? We're mostly in Northern England. Sorry, that's a terrible accent. But yeah, so tonight we're covering mainly the Smiths. We're going to be doing the Smiths, some lyrics from Morrissey and the Smiths, Ian Brown. Let's see. We've got, Ian Brown and Stone Roses. We'll be talking about Beetlebum, right, from Blur. And, of course, we're going to be talking about a little bit of Oasis. Oasis probably deserves a whole other stream. So we're only going to cover Oasis like as a sort of on the periphery because they deserve their own stream. Tonight we're mainly focusing on the Smiths. So why did I decide to cover this, y'all? Shouts out to everybody who's here because shouts out to our homeboy over there on Instagram, Ghost Reptile, who always is posting the Smiths, and I like the Smiths, so I thought I would cover them because I was listening to Bigmouth Strikes Again, and I just thought Morrissey's lyrics deserve to be analyzed if we're going to go into music analysis. And we've got a bunch of stuff on the way. We've got a whole bunch of streams on the way. And let's see, we've covered so much material, you guys. I don't even know what we've covered. We did Carlos the Jackal the other night. And we've got our Hollywood Scumbags stream coming up. And I just got this this mammoth first edition copy of Joe Esterhazy's Hollywood Animal. Look at this guy. This is the guy. This is a 700-page tome that I'll be tearing through, as well as the Don Simpson book. What's it called? High Concepts. Don Simpson High Concept. So I'll be covering that coming up soon. And that book is a tome as well. So I got to tear through those books, and then we'll be talking about Hollywood scumbaggery and all that stuff coming up soon. We've also got our Mark Twain sponsor stream coming up, and we got a bunch of other ones. We got JD Salinger, Catcher in the Rye. Shouts out to Countess again, and shouts out to Jack for sponsoring those streams. If you want to sponsor a stream, go ahead and donate some fat Dugan coin over here, and I'll take a look at what you got. In the meantime, I just thought I would cover the Smiths. Now, let's disclaimer here. Morrissey is not based, okay? But we're just looking at this for fun because we're going to go back to the text. This is what we do because it's a Bayes Lit Analyzer. We're going to be looking at the literature. And, of course, I've talked about how song lyrics are not poems. They are not literature, but they are literary. And certainly Morrissey's lyrics are a bit more high-minded than the average, especially the average 80s rock lyrics. So we're going to look into that and see some interesting things that he says in his lyrics. And this will be a pretty light stream. It'll be fun until we get to some sort of darker material, especially with Morrissey's song or the Smiths song about the Moors murders, which involves Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. Also, let's see, we've got... we're tying in some of this with Shakespeare's Sonnet 129, with Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress, and with John Donne's The Flea. So you may think that that's a strange thing, some pretty high-minded, high IQ literary canon to tie into Morrissey lyrics, but nevertheless, we're going to do it because that's where the allusions go, right? Shouts out to everybody out there. Cheers. So, of course, we're on here, so, the shame is that I can't play the music because we'd get an insta takedown, right? So we can't actually play the music. Maybe I need to get on Rockfin or something in the future especially once I hit that 1,000 subs. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed. We're doing so well. You realize that today is today is August 22nd. I think 2 days ago was the 6 month anniversary of this channel. And we are at like 900 something subs. If you're watching this and you like my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you help me out a lot. Please think about donating and supporting me with the links that my homeboys drop in there in the chat or in the video description or in the channel description or even on the banner on my actual YouTube page. You can really help me out a lot. I mean, this, I would say that all of your donations go to help the stream, but they really go to help me keep living, right? They go to help me keep living, LIVIN. So, yes, I need your donations, so thank you so much for supporting me, you guys. And, but, we're doing pretty well here. We, as I said, we're almost at 1,000 subs, and we've got over 31,000 views here. We've got 10,000 hours of watch time on this channel. That may not mean a lot to you if you don't, if you don't have a YouTube channel or whatever, but that's a lot. That's pretty good, and that's thanks to you all. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you, and I love you all, every one of you out there. So thank you. So where should we start? I'm going to get to Ian Brown in a little bit and his song "Little Seed, Big Tree," which you may not have heard, but came out during the 2020 shenanigans, and is a pretty good protest song. A lot of times, when you get protest songs, they end up being pretty cringe. But I gotta say, this one's pretty awesome. We're gonna get to Blur in a little bit. I think we should start with. Why don't we start with? Should we start with Bigmouth Strikes Again? Maybe we'll start with. Hold on, let me find my big packet here, because I've got John Dunn and all them in here. Yeah, why don't we start with Pretty Girls Make Graves. So we're gonna start with the song "Pretty Girls Make Graves" by the Smiths. So listen, I'm a Smiths fan. I like the Smiths, but just to give you a little bit of background, the Smiths, fronted by Morrissey, guitar player Johnny Marr, right, were a quintessential English band. Okay, and the first time I ever saw anything about the Smiths was like in 1987, and I had this like catalog, and you could buy like posters and stickers and like t-shirts for bands in it. I don't remember what it was called, but they always had the Smiths' "Meat is Murder" album cover in it. And I was just like, what is this? Why is this Vietnam guy on there? And of course, one reason why Morrissey is not based is, he's probably the most outspoken vegan in the world. He is. It makes no qualms about that. But we're not talking about that really tonight. We're talking about his lyrics. We're just sticking to the lyrics. And the song "Pretty Girls Make Graves" is pretty cool because I never was like a Smiths fan, especially in the 90s or anything. They just weren't my bag, baby. But I became a fan. I remember the moment that I started listening to them. It was when I moved to New York in late summer 2004, and I was in the Virgin Megastore in Union Square, and they were playing a track from the Morrissey album "You Are the Quarry," and it was this song "Irish Blood, English Heart." And I thought that's pretty cool, and for some reason it struck a chord. And then I went to nice pun, right? It struck a chord. Sorry, and that was lame. But I went back home, got on my old 2000s Dell computer on LimeWire. On the Kazaa on LimeWire, and downloaded a bunch of Smith songs, and for some reason that really struck me at the time. And even now, whenever I listen to the Smiths, I think automatically of living in the East Village in New York with my homeboys, and I was working in a bar. I'd work all day, and I was rehearsing for a play at night, and I had to take the train from First Ave all the way to Jersey, and the city lights and the subway and the cityscape and the nightscape mixed with, I would listen to Smith songs on my mini disc. I downloaded them onto my Sony mini disc because I had a mini disc because at the time, like, but well, before that, when I was living in the UK, like that was a big thing to have a mini disc player. Everyone had one. They never really caught on here, but a lot of people had them over there, and it was perfect because you didn't have to carry around a big old Discman, right? Um, and I would just listen to uh, William. It was really nothing. This charming man. Pretty girls make graves. Um, oh, you handsome devil, right? And it just like, for some reason, the mood and the time, it just fit. And so, of course, I was a decade, 2 decades late on the Smiths, but that's okay because when they were popular, I was like, 4 to 8 years old. So, and of course, the Smiths are like very Northern English, and are sort of encapsulate this mood, this ambiance of 80s Thatcherite, depressing, Northern English, grim city life, right? Which is something that was totally foreign to me. Of course, when I moved to the UK, wasn't so foreign. And of course, we're gonna read we're gonna go over this one of the songs about the Moors murders, and I spent some time I walked across. Actually, the first time I went to England, I walked across Cumbria, which is the Lake District. I took a okay, so I took a I was on my Christmas and then New Year holiday, and I bought a pass for the ferry from where was I? I went from Belfast to I went from Larne to Troon in Scotland, and then I walked to Carlisle, and I wanted to go to the Arthurian. I was kind of on an Arthurian trip, and I went to some of the castles there, and and then I went up through the Lake District, and I walked through the Lake District, Windermere, Ambleside. Then let's see, where did I go to? I forget what city I went to. Then I took a train across England, and then across northern England, and then I got to Yorkshire. Then I walked across the Vale of Yorkshire, the Yorkshire Moors, over to Robin Hood's Bay. Then I walked down Robin Hood's Bay, Whitby to Robin Hood's Bay, and then down the East Coast, and then made it all the way to London. Then from London, I caught the Channel Tunnel, and then I went to France. Then in France, I went through Lyon, and then to Charleville, which is where Rimbaud is from, in near the Belgian border. And then from there, I walked down and then took a train into Paris, where I met up with my best friend David from Belfast, and we spent about a week in Paris. And then from there, we caught the flight. The flight was like £1 or something from Paris to Belfast, and that was that was 2000. That was December 2000 to January 2001. And that was it changed my life. But walking across the Vale of Yorkshire, especially in January, and the Yorkshire Moors was pretty amazing. And I wanted to get up to Northumberland and go into Bronte country, but I didn't make it that trip. But yeah, I've done a lot of walking, and that was also when mad cow disease was rampant, and anyway, that's a whole other story. Anyway, so my favorite Smith songs are Hand in Glove, William It Was Really Nothing, This Charming Man, Pretty Girls Make Graves, A Rush and a Push, Bigmouth Strikes Again. I think those are my favorite. Those are probably, now listen, forgive me if you're watching this and you're like a super Smiths fan. Just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. You might be watching this and you're like, yeah, duh, we know all this shit. Don't get mad at me if I get some facts wrong, okay? Because I'm not doing a factual stream about the Smiths. It's not like a fan stream. I'm just trying to give some background information and then analyze the lyrics. So Orthodox Explorer says, about 1995. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be paying attention to chat. The first time I went to Northern Ireland was 1995. And then I moved there in 2000. And then I moved to England. I actually moved to England in summer 2002. I lived there till summer 2004. Then from there I lived. Then I moved to New York for a year. I lived in the East Village and I was acting. Then from there, I went to I got a job in Malaysia, and I lived in Malaysia for a summer. Then I went back to Belfast, got my master's degree, and then came back to America after that. So, so, so let's talk about Pretty Girls Make Graves, because the first time I actually heard that title was the band Pretty Girls Make Graves, which was a sort of a Death Cab for Cutie-esque early 2000s band. They may still be around, I don't know, but I heard about them from my friend Paul, who shouts out to my friend Paul, who I don't know if he wants me to shout him out, but I'm going to anyway because he's one of my oldest and best friends in the world, and he knows more about music than anybody in the world. Paul actually writes for fun. He writes music reviews for he's written for Under the Radar, I think Pitchfork, Spin Magazine, and he is a screenwriter in Hollywood. So shouts out to Paul because he would make me mixes. He was actually in charge of the radio station Wake Radio at Wake Forest. From there, he got a job in New York, and anyway. But he would make me mixes, and one of the mixes had Pretty Girls Make Graves on it, and that was like 2003. And 2003 is also around the time when I actually saw Death Cab for Cutie in concert in Bristol, in England. I was by myself, and it was like at a Hell's Angels joint, which was weird. But then I learned that the title of the band comes from the Smiths song, and then the title of the Smiths song actually comes from, guess whom? Somebody we've covered. New Jack Kerouac City actually comes from Jack Kerouac and from the Dharma Bums, which I did a whole stream on if you haven't seen that. And the quote from the Dharma Bums is, he says, but on top of all that, the feelings about Princess, I'd also gone through an entire year of celibacy based on my feeling that lust was the direct cause of birth, which was the direct cause of suffering and death. And I had really no lie come to a point where I regarded lust as offensive and even cruel. Pretty girls make graves was my saying. Whenever I'd had to turn my head around involuntarily to stare at the incomparable pretties of Indian Mexico. It comes from Jack Kerouac's Dharma Bums. So let's look at the lyrics here. And the lyrics are Pretty Girls Make Graves. Upon the sand, upon the bay, there is a quick and easy way, you say. Before you illustrate, I'd rather state, I'm not the man you think I am. I'm not the man you think I am. And sorrow's native son, and will not smile for anyone, and pretty girls make graves. End of the pier, end of the bay. You tug my arm and say, give in to lust, give up to lust. Oh, heaven knows we'll soon be dust. I could have been wild and free, but nature played this trick on me. She wants it now, and she will not wait, but she's too rough, and I'm too delicate. Then on the sand, another man, he takes her hand. A smile lights up her stupid face. I lost my faith in womanhood. So it's interesting because the song is, it's pretty clear through the lyrics, right? But one thing about the Smiths is that I think that they're a great band because they are this sort of 80s rough trade, alternative sort of underground English band that then was on top of the pops and became a huge pop band. And yet their music stayed fairly like unproduced in a way, if that makes sense. They don't, especially in comparison to like the typical, Anglo-American, 80s, like highly synthesized, highly polished music. And I'm not criticizing that. It's just a different type of music, right? And Johnny Marr, is obviously brilliant, and their music is intricate, but it just doesn't have the kind of polish, and that goes with their aesthetic, right? If that makes sense. And one thing that I think makes them really interesting is that, Morrissey is this sort of like, I don't know, ambisexual or asexual, like Volcel character, right? Who's like, he looks like he's a total, like, a sort of soy face, glasses, James Dean-esque quiff guy who sings in this sort of almost operatic voice, but it's catchy. right? It's catchy and it's like it's really good. I'm saying the music is like really good, it's not because it's like poppy in the normal way. The reason I think that they're good and that they're important and successful is because there's this contrast, there's this juxtaposition in their music. And again, forgive me, like this is just my opinion, my take on it. But one of the things, like the way that I kind of look at it is in terms of what someone said. I heard one time about the reason that like American cities, certain American cities are have a beautiful aesthetic. Like so, for instance, one reason that Boston is successful is because they didn't do what, for instance, Richmond did, which is tear down a lot of the old historic buildings. They actually they kept a lot of the old um, colonial and federalist architecture, and then it's juxtaposed against the sort of high rise modernity. So you get a contrast, right? It's the same thing in New York. You get brownstones, and then you get weird like colonial buildings, and then brownstones, and then you get the high rises, and you get modernity. And it's interesting because it's not all one thing, right? It's there's a contrast, there's unity and variety, and I look at that in a way. This may seem weird, but that's how I kind of look at the Smiths, because their music is uh, fairly simple sounding and almost like traditional, like alternative music, but the lyrics are are pretty high minded. They're intricate. They're not it's not simple hook and chorus. In fact, you could sometimes say that Morrissey's lyrics are pretty verbose at times, and yet they always like tell a story. There's a theme, and to get to sort of the culmination of this, one reason I think that they're so good is because Morrissey's lyrics are always they're melancholy. Like when I think of melancholy poppy music, the Smiths almost immediately come to mind. And by melancholy, I don't mean it doesn't exactly mean sad, especially in a literary sense. That's too simple of a definition. It really means, melancholy is one of the sort of Renaissance humors, right? And it's like it's almost like there's almost like a joy in sadness that is melancholy, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the idea of the oxymoronic bittersweet, or like how fall, fall is so beautiful and aesthetically pleasing because even though nature is in the process of dying, it's also beautiful. It flares, it flares out, and there's vermilion colors before it perishes into, the death of wintertime. So this song, "Pretty Girls Make Graves," it's like it's about love, and yet it's about the the concept of love versus lust, and how I think the speaker in this song like wants something pure but doesn't really know what that means. And you could simplify this and say, it's a love song, and it's the guy's been stifled by his lover, and then she's taken by somebody else. But in a sense, it's more than that. It's almost an intellectual idea of love. And "Pretty Girls Make Graves" is like that. There's this saying that one of my friends had when we were teenagers. Like, uh, we would be at the pool or something, and my friend would always say like, I'd be like, "Damn, that girl is hot," and he'd say, "Man, she was born with a boyfriend," and that's kind of what the idea of the song is. It's like that sometimes beauty is like distant. It's something you can't achieve, right? Or not everybody. I mean, you can only right. You're only going to find the one. But it's this sense of melancholy that goes along with the process of falling in love. But it reminded me. This is where the poems come into play, because it reminded me of, and this isn't out of the blue, because Morrissey takes bits of lyrics and entire phrases from. It's actually fitting that he takes them from Oscar Wilde, right? Because Oscar Wilde said essentially the same thing that T.S. Eliot later said, and that Picasso said, which is that genius steals and sort of milquetoast mediocrity borrows, right? And he takes phrases from Oscar Wilde. He wrote a song specifically about Sarah Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, and he takes phrases from British angry young man, the angry young man genre of film in the sort of 60s through 80s. And again, the reason I showed this picture, let me find this picture again. The reason that I showed this picture right here, which is grim northern England, is because the coal mines, you know, if we were in Wales, it would be the slate mines, I suppose, the slate mines and the coal mines. And the sort of grimness that comes out of the mediocrity of post-World War II Britain is really inherent in the Smiths' music. It's really what gave birth to Britpop, because you know, you often hear that, like, the great artists reside in cold, barren places. You know, it's very hard to create art in a tropical paradise. You need to be sort of oppressed by the climate and the weather and by loneliness. And that is sort of what gave rise to Britpop. I mean, the Smiths are sort of a precursor of 90. They're not exactly Britpop, right? But they gave rise to this massive explosion in British pop music that rose out of the sort of late Thatcher era into the 90s in Britain, and with Oasis and Blur, right, and Elastica and all these bands, and the Verve and all these bands. But one thing that Morrissey does is, you know, he's literary, and so I couldn't help but think of Shakespeare's Sonnet 129, which is essentially the same theme. He says, the expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action. Do you see? And till action, lust is perjured, murderous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoyed no sooner but despised straight, past reason hunted, and no sooner had, past reason hated as a swallowed bait on purpose laid to make the taker mad. Mad in pursuit and in possession so, had, having, and in quest to have, extreme, a bliss in proof and proved a very woe. Before a joy proposed, behind a dream. All this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. What's he talking about there? Well, the poem is about, when he says the expense of spirit, he's not only talking about the fact that, you know, the process of wooing is spirited, and he's not talking about the spirit of love. He's talking about spirit is a body reference. The expense, to expend one's spirit, is a reference to the act of, what do we call it? Le petit mort in French, right? The little death. And so what he's saying here is, it's kind of the same, it's almost the same theme that the porter, remember the porter uses in Macbeth? Remember my Macbeth stream? In the comic relief scene after Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have killed Duncan, where the porter talks about alcohol in the same sense, that alcohol is a double-sided thing, right? Because that's why alcohol is related to Bacchus and to the Bacchic rites, because Bacchus essentially is, for half of the year, he has this cult of women, and they make merry, and they have their grapes, and, you know, it's spring and summer, and then in fall and winter, he departs, and the Bacchantes create this bacchanal, which is they go mad with lust, and they rove the countryside, tearing men apart in their anger and jealousy. And that is essentially the same thing that alcohol does, right? It makes you rise to, says the porter, and it makes you lose it. It makes you lusty, and then it makes you lose your lust. And it's the same thing in this, where the pursuit of the pursuit of the other person comes to a point where, when it's over, one feels the vacuum of lust, right? And so he's saying here, when he says that mad in pursuit and in possession so, right? That's the act of what Morrissey was just saying in the song, in the Smith song, Pretty Girls Make Graves, which is to have this person, it seems like bliss, and yet to keep them so is creates this sense of woe, right? This vacuum of lust and anger and petty jealousy. Another poem that comes to mind is, excuse me, is Andrew Marvell's "To His Coy Mistress." You may remember this one from. I don't know if we've covered this one, but this is a one of the neoclassical poems. You can tell it's neoclassical Enlightenment era because it's written in couplets. They're not heroic couplets. They're not iambic pentameter couplets. They're iambic tetrameter. But it's essentially a carpe diem poem, right? Where the speaker, and this is a narrative poem, the speaker is trying to convince the woman that he's wooing that that it would be best to give herself over to him because if there be world enough in time, this coyness lady had no crime, right? It's just like Robert Herrick's poem "To the Virgins Make Much of Time," and he says, "Had we but world enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime." In other words, if we had all the time in the world, right, then your coyness, you're not giving your prudishness would be okay. He says, and this is the typical like youthful, lustful spirit, right? He says we would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side shouldst rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. But, there's the volta in the poem, the change, the shift, right? This is like the meme. All of this, but, right? But, at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. And yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, not in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song, then worms shall try that long preserved virginity. And your quaint honor turned to dust, and into ashes all my lust. So what he's saying here is she has to give herself over to him because time is going by too quickly, and before they know it, she will have lost her ability to, well, for one, to produce children, right? And it's interesting, this kind of really, pretty bawdy reference here where he says, look, if you don't let me, he's saying, the speaker is saying, if you don't let me be one with you in terms of our bodies, then when you go to the grave, the worms will inherit my lust, right? Because the worms will enter her through her marble vault, and as to ashes will always lust turn. The graves, right? Pretty girls make graves. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires, and in every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may. And now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in this slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. See the cemetery metaphor? Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, yet we will make him run. In other words, they will make time run by the act of making love. And the final poem that this reminded me of, I'm not going to do this with every song. It was just this song that reminded me of these three poems. And I think this is pretty appropriate. It's appropriate because this is what we do on our channel. And I think that intertextuality and the constant allusions in literature play a role in something as simple, as seemingly as simple as pop songs. And the final poem is "The Flea" by John Donne. Now, John Donne, we've covered a little bit here, but John Donne was a contemporary of William Shakespeare. And John Donne sort of lives a two-part life, in a sense, because he is John Donne throughout his life, but in his youth, he is sort of known, scholars call him, and I think in contemporary times he called himself this, he was Jack Donne. Because he was a sort of a Jack the Lad. He was a jack of all trades, right? What's my ancestry out of interest? Is he of British descent? Yes. I'm almost 100% English descent. About 1% Northern Irish, Ulster Scots. But the rest is pure English, all English. The Flea by John Donne. Later on in his life, Jack Donne became, if you didn't know this, the poet John Donne, or Jack Donne, became John Donne, the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And of course, he wrote Meditation 17, which we've covered here, right? No man is an island. Every man's death diminishes me because I'm part of the mainland. Therefore, ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. But yes, John Donne became a sort of eminent Anglican theologian who outlived Shakespeare, which is interesting because he was a wild man. If you haven't read John Donne's Holy Sonnets, Holy Sonnet 14 is my favorite poem of all time. But this is a Jack Donne poem, and this is The Flea. He says, and this is pretty bawdy, okay? And John Donne is intricate. I mean, he's almost modern in the intricacy of his poems. He says, mark but this flea, and mark in this, how little that which thou deniest me is. So what's she denying him? Right, she's denying him her maidenhead, right? He says, it sucked me first, and now sucks thee. That's purposeful on Jack Donne's part. And in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said a sin, nor shame, nor loss of maidenhead. Yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with one blood made of two. And this, alas, is more than we would do, he says in the first stanza. In other words, she's denying him her virginity, right? Her maidenhead. And he says, look, this is stretching it, right? He says, you just got bitten by this flea, because of course they're in, Elizabethan England, right? And he says, you just got bitten by this flea, and the blood in the flea is your blood, and the flea also bit me, so our two bloods mingled be inside this flea, right? In other words, our bloods, our precious bodily fluids, as he says in Dr. Strangelove, right? General Jack D. Ripper. Mandrake, you ever heard of precious bodily fluids, right? And he says that basically, like, if that's the case, then why not let those things mingle together in real life? Second stanza, he says, oh, stay, indicating, it's kind of almost a stage direction. Oh, stay, indicating she's walking the hell out. This is crazy. He's doing too much, right? He's trying too hard. He says, there 3 lives in one flea spare, where we almost, nay, more than married are. Do you get how he's bringing in religious imagery into this? He says, this flea is you and I, and this, our marriage bed and marriage temple is. In other words, now the flea itself is their marriage temple. Though parents grudge, and we are met and cloistered in these living walls of jet, because the flea is black, right? Though use make you apt to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege 3 sins in killing 3. Pretty complex series of extended metaphors here, right? Especially in a early 17th, late 16th, early 17th century poem. But do you see how he's saying that he's trying to say to her in his wooing that their lust, their act of their sexual act together will not be a sin, is what he's saying. because their blood is already mingled in this cloistered temple of the walls of jet of the flea, where they have three bloods, right? And now they are going to be they want to be mingled in that one thing, and now they are committing an act of holy matrimony by mingling the blood. He says, "Cruel and sudden hast thou since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence," because she crushed the flea, right, between her nails. He says, "Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that drop which it sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst, and sayest that thou find'st not thyself nor me the weaker now. 'Tis true. Then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor, when thou yieldst to me, will waste as this flea's death took life from thee." It's brilliant. It's a brilliant polemic, right? I mean, it's brilliant in the sense that, he's a wordsmith, and you can imagine actually that his mind is sexy enough in this metaphor, in a sense, to have consummated the argument that he's just made, is what I assume, because of his reputation. And I just love it because it's a fun poem. But it is certainly mixes. It sort of gives us sort of a further background and context to this "Pretty Girls Make Graves" song by the Smiths. So the next the next song that I want to cover would be something simpler. I guess let's look at something simple, and that would be "Bigmouth Strikes Again." And the lyrics to this are pretty simple, but this is interesting because, again, synchro. You just heard we were talking about Joan of Arc 2 nights ago, or last night. I don't know when that was. 2 nights ago or something. With our buddy West Lexicon Media over there, and with Jerry Exposing Powerful Lies. And West Lex and I have been talking a lot recently about Joan of Arc for a number of reasons. And it's just interesting that she comes up in the lyrics to this song. So the lyrics, let's see, he says, "Sweetness, sweetness, I was only joking when I said I'd like to smash every tooth in your head." See, you see what I mean about Smith's lyrics being sudden? They're sort of sudden and uncomfortable. You because of the light tune, Johnny Marr's production and the guitar and the melody and the song contrast with the dark imagery in the lyrics, right? I mean, he's talking about actual violence here. He says, "I'd like to smash every tooth in your head. Oh, sweetness, I was only joking when I said by rights you should be bludgeoned in your bed." And he says, "And now I know how Joan of Arc felt. And now I know how Joan of Arc felt as the flames rose to her Roman nose and her Walkman started to," what's the word there? What does he use? "And her Walkman started to moan." The Walkman is kind of is obviously a, what do you call that? An anachronism, because the Walkman in this is like the 80s representation of the voices in her head. Now, the voices in her head were, I believe, Joan of Arc. I'm not going to get into Joan of Arc because I think that's too serious and too. That doesn't go along with what we're doing in this stream. But I'm pretty serious about my thoughts about Joan of Arc. I think that she was. I think that she was pure. I think that she was martyred, and I think that she was. Just imagine. I'll just say this. Imagine a peasant girl who receives God's vision and leads an army and wins, and then is tortured for her faith and never recants and dies in faith. I think that's amazing, and that's unique and doesn't happen. And so what he's saying here, though, the metaphor is, he's saying the song really is about, I think Morrissey said something about how, like, it's kind of lame. It's like, he said, no matter what he did, like critics were always sort of bashing him, and he, you people can relate to this now. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, but like he said that he would if he like picked up a kitten, right, a stray kitten and petted the kitten, then the critics would say that he like picked up the kitten to murder the cat or something, essentially, right? And so he's saying that everything good that he does works against him in the eyes of the unfaithful or the impure. And he says, "Big Mouth strikes again," right? Big Mouth strikes again. Um, in other words, his own mouth gets him into trouble, and he says, I mean, that's essentially the song. He says, and I've got no right to take my place with the human race. With the human race, Big Mouth strikes again. And yeah, one of the critics said, timelessness in the passage of time, Joan of Arc, as if he's been a big mouth for centuries, and he feels connected to Joan of Arc's outspoken nature, youth, in the guise of the Walkman, to old age. This denotes that he feels he'll never be able to change or to stop being a big mouth. And so that's Big Mouth Strikes Again, which I think is it's a brilliant song because it's so simple. And yet it's violent. The next one that I'm going to cover, I could cover Hand in Glove. Hand in Glove is great. This is a great song. And I just want to go over some of the references in the song. Let's see. It says, the lyric, "I'll probably never see you again." Hand in glove, hand in glove. I always, the phrase hand in glove comes from, I think, like 1678, and essentially means the sort of seamless transfer of power between two people, right? Because the hand that fits into the glove. I always thought that the phrase had a sinister connotation because I always pictured two medieval guys shaking hands, and one is barehanded, right? Bears his hand in friendship, and the other is wearing a glove, which is a barrier between his true self and his intentions. And that may be my misinterpretation, but that's the way I always have seen that phrase. Because whenever it's used, it's always used in sort of a weird, sort of insidious connotation. Corporations and private citizens work hand in glove. Well, that doesn't sound right, does it? Shouts out to Countess out there. Shouts out to Kristen, Slowboy Whiteboard, and all my homies. Listen, you guys, if you want to support me, please smash that like. Please don't forget to leave comments after the stream is over. I really appreciate that. It helps me with the algorithm. Please share the stream on social media, and please think about donating to me to help me get me more materials, to get me to keep me going here, to help me to afford these gigantic 700-page tomes. Shouts out to my pops because he sent me this one. Joe Esterhazy, Hollywood Animal. He's again the guy that wrote Basic Instinct, which was the highest. It was the highest selling screenplay of all time. There was a bidding war before anyone had even read the script, and that was that's sort of the book revolves around that. But it says here, let's see. "I'll probably never see you again" in the lyrics is lifted from Shelley Delaney, the Shelley Delaney play A Taste of Honey. Morrissey also paraphrases "Everything depends upon how near you sleep to me" from Leonard Cohen's Take This Longing in the lyric "Everything depends upon how near you stand to me." It was recorded at Strawberry Studios in Stockport, England, and Rough Trade Records in 1983. Rough Trade is still a pretty important. I don't know if it's underground so much anymore, but it was an underground independent record label and music store. Let's see. Morrissey picked the single's purposefully controversial artwork, an image of a naked dude standing with his back to the camera. It was snapped by Jim French. And that, interestingly, is what contributed to it being such a high seller and so popular because of the I think this was their first single. Was this their first single? Because it was shocking to the establishment or whatever. I don't know. It's pretty fake and gray anyway. But it says, in 1984, the Smiths wrote to the 60s chanteuse Sandy Shaw asking her to record a cover of the song. The reluctant first Shaw was won over after reading Morrissey's praise of her in the press. And she said to Melody Maker, I said I'd go into the studio with them with the proviso that if I didn't like the result, we'd scrap it. But we had so much fun. I think the single's great. She's in the background of the song, by the way. Eddie B in 2013 interviewed Morrissey, and he said what his favorite Morrissey lyric is, and Johnny Marr replied that it would probably be all of this song because he explained it's such a statement of love and friendship and has a sense of going forward, and it has a kind of a genuine spirit about it, which is pretty basic. But Hand in Glove is a great song, great poppy song. Okay, so the next song is about it's Suffer the Children, and this is a Smith song that is really different from the rest of the Smiths repertoire, and it is interesting because it is about the Moors murders that occurred in the 60s from 1963 to 1965, which Jay has actually covered. Jay's Analysis, our homeboy over there, Jay Dyer at Jay's Analysis has covered this in depth with his analysis of Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, who were two creeper, psychotic Satanist killers. And Morrissey, of course, grew up. Morrissey was born in 1959, and he remembered this. It was played a big part in his consciousness because this was all over Northern England. And so listen to the lyrics. Over the moor, take me to the moor, dig a shallow grave, and I'll lay me down. Leslie Ann, with your pretty white beads, oh, John, you'll never be a man, and you'll never see your home again. Oh, Manchester, so much to answer for. Edward, see those alluring lights? Tonight will be your very last night. A woman said, I know my son is dead. I'll never rest my hands on his sacred head. Hindley wakes and Hindley says, oh, wherever has he gone? I've gone. But fresh lilac moorland fields cannot hide the stolid stench of death. Hindley wakes and Hindley says, oh, whatever has he done? But this is no easy ride, for a child cries, oh, find me, nothing more. We are on a sullen, misty moor. We may be dead and we may be gone, but we will be right by your side until the day you die. This is no easy ride. We will haunt you when you laugh, yes. You could say, we're a team. You might sleep, but you'll never dream. Over the moors, I'm on the moor, the child is on the moor. Holy fuck, that is a dark song, right? Because the song is in the guise of, first of all, it's like three separate voices. It is a speaker's interpretation of these horrible events and looking back, with hindsight back in time. It's also spoken or sung from the viewpoint of Myra Hindley herself, and then from a sort of a third person interpretation of Myra Hindley, which is interesting because that relates to the sort of DID disassociative aspect of this, right? Where you have people committing crimes that are so otherworldly that they are demonic. And I'm sure that they are demonic. I'm sure that these people were almost certainly possessed by demons. They were serial killing, occultic, CHILD killers. And then you have the mother's voice. And then actually you have a fourth voice, which would be the child himself, right? Which is being talked to, being lulled to sleep before these horrible ritual murders, saying that you'll never sleep, you'll never dream, over the moors. And the moors, it's interesting that that it takes place, that the song takes place on the moors, because they represent a kind of primordial, archetypal, dark, mysterious place especially in the minds of the English. And I'm sure anybody watching this can attest to that. That is a from Britain, right? Because it's the Moors are interesting because it's when you're an American, it's hard to have a concept of this place because America is so, especially on the East Coast and in the South. America is so vegetative. There's so many trees here, right? When you're flying over America, it's like all you see is trees and then you sort of see the contours. And then when you get to the west, when you pass over, you see the mountains, and then you get to the West Coast, it's just like arid desert, right? And it all turns kind of brown and sort of sandy. But it's different in the British Isles because, it's civilization is so much older that all the trees have been cut down. Like I've talked before about Derry in Northern Ireland, meaning oak, and how the English cut down the trees because the trees are shaped like this. They're bent by the wind, and they were perfect for the bows of ships. So the tree cutting and the logging went on for so long that you really, especially when you fly over, you really see the contours of the earth. And the moors are this sort of barren, desolate place where there are bogs and large swaths of territory with no trees. And that's why you see the heather grows, right? The heather, and then he talks about here the lilac and it's almost Tolkien-esque, right? When he says the misty moors, he says the fresh lilac moorland fields, and then he says cannot hide the stolid stench of death. And the stolid stench of death also comes from the bogs themselves, but it's the primordial sense of death that is also inherent in books like Wuthering Heights, right? Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, which we need to cover. But I'm going to leave that one there. That's enough of that one. And then we get another epic song here, which is A Rush and a Push, and The Land is Ours, which you may not remember this song. This is a Smith song, but it's a brilliant song. So here are the lyrics to the song. He says, "Oh, hello, I'm the ghost of a troubled Joe, hung by his pretty white neck some 18 months ago. I traveled to a mystical time zone, and I missed my bed, and I soon came home. They said, there's too much caffeine in your bloodstream and a lack of real spice in your life. I said, leave me alone because I'm all right, Dad, surprised to still be on my own. Oh, but don't mention loud. I'd hate to strain the pain again. A rush and a push in the land that we stand on is ours. It has been before, so it shall be again. And people who are uglier than you and I, they take what they need and just leave. A rush and a push in the land that we stand on is ours. Your youth may be gone, but you're still a young man. So phone me, so phone me. Oh, I think I'm in love. Oh, I think I'm in love. I think I'm in love. Oh, it ends." Brilliant song because, Morrissey, I think this song has been associated with almost an IRA jingoism because, and I don't know if Morrissey is an IRA sympathizer or anything, but he is from Irish immigrant parents to Northern England, and yet the song also deals with, I guess, a sense of, I don't know, it's a sense of, you could look at this through some sort of like colonialist lens, right? But it's interesting because the reason, I'm not saying I agree with the song. I'm just saying I think it's a pretty well written song. It's an intricate song because it really ties into this very British, almost mythology of the sea and of kind of a seagoing life and almost piracy, right? Right, I'm the ghost of a troubled Joe, hung by his pretty white neck some 18 months ago. It almost reminds me of a, like, I would think that this would be a song about, the Australian conquest, in a sense, right? Sending Irish convicts to Australia. It's almost like a, what's that guy's name? Ned, what's the Australian guy's name? The Australian hero, Ned Kelly. It's like almost like a Ned Kelly ballad, and I think that's interesting because the Smiths consciously took a lot of their melodies from the Rolling. They sort of kind of tried to invert Rolling Stones melodies, especially Street Fighting Man. I think it was Hand in Glove that is a take on Street Fighting Man, the melody, because it gives it this sort of momentum and this sort of impetus. And and the Rolling Stones. Remember, Mick Jagger actually. Remember, Mick Jagger wasn't just in the film Free Jack. Remember, he was in Free Jack that Jay and Jamie covered. I saw that in the theater, by the way, with my friend Andrew Grubbs and Brad in, what was it, like 1992 or 1993. I thought it was the coolest fucking movie I'd ever seen at the time because I was like 12. And remember, Anthony Hopkins is essentially like the 1984 V for Vendetta-esque, like, talking head. You know, he's like the Oz character. And then you get Mick Jagger is this like weird dystopian future cop, and Emilio Estevez is like in a he's like in a Indy 500 car or something, and he like busts through and goes in the future. And then I remember that movie was actually important at the time because if you didn't know this, it popularized the Glock because the Glock plays a major role. It's kind of like Chekhov's gun, literally, in the film. But the Glock played like a major role in the film, and I remember that at the time, that's when people started talking about how a Glock is the gun that you can take through an AIR PORT because it's made entirely of plastic. There's no steel to it. Now that's I don't know if that was ever true, but it's certainly bullshit now, right? But that's why it was popular because it played a big role in the movie. Sorry, a little movie spurg sidetrack there. And but yeah, but I was saying Mick Jagger because Mick Jagger, one of his other film roles was he played Ned Kelly in a little known version of Ned Kelly, the Australian convict hero, right? Rachel says I've been stumping hard to get me BLA to do a basement analysis, to do a Kate Bush analysis with me. Probably gotta send him a fat check. I would love to do. You can send me fat checks anytime out there. Anybody, please send me some fat checks now. But but I would love to do a Kate Bush analysis with you, Rachel, based homeschool mom. I think that would be awesome. And in fact, just the other day, I was rereading the lyrics to "Hounds of Love," and of course, "Running Up That Hill" is "Running Up That Hill" and "Hounds of Love" are like two of my favorite. I mean, they are really special songs to me. And of course, now Stranger Things has sort of ruined the song because it's in every Instagram meme. But Hounds of Love, if you haven't heard the Hounds of Love version by Night Jewel, Night, Nite Jewel, she's a LA sort of synth pop musician. She does a great version of that. And actually, we could tie that into there's a British artist, Natasha Khan, who is also into sort of, occult witchcraft and shit. But her name's Natasha Khan. She goes by Bat for Lashes. She's a great musician. She's got an album, Two Sons. She had a song called Daniel in 2007. She's been up for a Mercury Prize. She did one, an album, a brilliant album a few years ago, like 3 years ago, which was themed on Lost Boys. And it's all about like LA vampires. And it's great. It's all synth pop. And she's sort of a neo Kate Bush, so we could tie it in with that if you're interested. So yeah, let's get back to this. So anyway, that's my take on a rush and a push, and the land is ours. Almost jingoistic, isn't it? And we did the Moore's Murders, and Suffer the Little Children. We did Hand in Glove. Let's see. Just a word about the Stone Roses. Before I get to Ian Brown's song, the Stone Roses are the precursor. Really, they are the immediate precursor to the explosion in popularity in Britpop because they're a Manchester band. And Day Jotter says I live in Ned Kelly area. Right. Well, cheers to you. Cheers to you, homeboy. Appreciate you. Cheers. And yeah, so the Stone Roses really they were hugely popular in England. And then they really blew up after Oasis blew up, because Oasis, eh, I'm sure this is a hot take or whatever, but Oasis, to me, I love Oasis. And Oasis obviously took a lot of influence from Ian Brown and from the Stone Roses. They did their own thing. They made their own thing. Most people obviously compare Oasis to the Beatles. That's a self comparison. They did that on, as a self image on purpose. But I've always thought that they took a lot from the Stone Roses purposefully. And again, as Oscar Wilde said, genius steals. So, but Ian Brown is the driving force behind the Stone Roses. And if you haven't heard the Stone Roses, they're an amazing band, and their big song, which again is one of these songs that is really important in my own life. I cannot, just to share something a little personal here. I there's some songs and some artists that I can't listen to, and that's because of things in my life. I'm sure everybody feels that way. Uh, for instance, Elliott Smith. I cannot listen to Elliott Smith because I was again, due to my friend Paul. Paul introduced me to Elliott Smith. I was in San Francisco with him in the spring of what was that? Spring of 2000. Yeah, we went to San Francisco to go to City Lights Bookstore, and to go look at all the Beat Generation stuff and to hang out. To go. I'd never been to the West Coast, and when we were there, Paul introduced me to. He showed me a copy of Elliott Smith's album on Kill Rock Stars, and the first song I ever listened to was the song Clementine, and it was one of those moments where like I heard the song and it changed my life. It blew me away. It was so meaningful to me at that time in my life that it just blew me away. I became a huge Elliott Smith fan. Of course, I had all of his albums, Either Or, XO, and then I went back in the back catalog and bought Heat Miser. And then of course he got that Oscar nomination for his song for Goodwill. He was in Goodwill Hunting, and then he appeared at the Oscars, which was a huge deal. It was like really weird. And then actually I went with Paul and my girlfriend at the time, and we went to see Elliott Smith live at the 930 Club in DC, and that was in 2000. And then he died, I think October 21st, 2003, and I was in England, and I remember that because I heard the news. And Elliott Smith, I have Elliott Smith's biography back here, and actually Paul is friends with his producer. His death is one of those big sort of conspiracy things because of how he died. I won't get into that, but it's very sketchy. And he may have been murked out by his girlfriend or whatever. Who knows? But the fact is that there were other things that happened, and I cannot listen to Elliott Smith. I just can't listen to him now because it's too much. And the same goes really with this Stone Roses song, "I'm the Resurrection." It's such a powerful song. It's an anthem. It's really an anthem, for their concerts, and any Stone Roses song will know this song. But the lyrics are so simple. But when you listen to the song, listen to the melody and the climactic moment in the song. He says, "Down, down, 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 you bring me down. I hear you knocking down my door, and I can't sleep at night. Your face, it has no place, no room for you inside my house. I need to be alone. Don't waste your words. I don't need anything from you. I don't care where you've been or what you're going to do. Turn, turn. I wish you'd learn there's a time and place for everything. I've got to get it through. Cut loose, because you're no use. I can't stand another second in your company. Don't waste your words. I don't need anything from you. I don't care where you've been or what you plan to do. Stone me. Why can't you see you're a no one, nowhere, washed up baby who'd look better dead? Your tongue is far too long. I don't like the way it sucks and slurps upon my every word. Don't waste your words. I don't need anything from you. I don't care where you've been or what you plan to do." And then the climactic moment in the song, he says, "I am the resurrection and I am the life. I could never bring myself to hate you as I'd like. I'm the resurrection and I am the life. I could never bring myself to hate you as I like." Now, of course, the climactic moment in the song is a moment of, I don't care what anybody else says about the song, that that would be a metaphor. I take this literally. I take this as a moment of pure joy and exultation in the glory of Christ. That's what I take it as. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Okay, but I take this as a moment of giving myself over to God. Okay, I hate the fucking Antichrist. Excuse me. Um, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I love this song. Um, and um, and yes, didn't Jesus say something like that, Thomas Henderson? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And and that is why you know, I take that as a moment in the song where the guy's life is falling apart. He has no one, but he has God. Okay, and that's how I take it. So that's what I think about that song. I don't take this as metaphor. I take that as literal, right? I take that as literal. That he is searching for God. That he wants God's glory. He wants. Who doesn't want to be loved, right? Everybody wants to be loved, and there's always somebody that's going to love you. You know who that is. All right, so the next song is a vast departure, and that is Blur's Beetlebum. All right, you guys know Blur, right? Blur and Oasis, right, are the twin sort of pillars, the Yin and Boaz of Britpop, I suppose. And they had this sort of, East Coast West Coast battle or whatever. And it's interesting that Blur went on to, Damon Albarn went on to continue to be a successful and important and relevant musician, right? Um, and with Gorillaz, right? He made Gorillaz with I forget the name of the artist, but do you guys like? I don't know if you guys like Gorillaz. I love Gorillaz. Gorillaz did Stylo, the song Stylo, and their album Plastic Beach, right? And Maddie says Oasis over everyone. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love Oasis. Okay, and that's why I'm not really going to cover Oasis in this stream because it's like a whole separate stream. It's too much, and they sort of transcend Britpop, But I do like the song. The moment when I really started to like Blur was the song Coffee and TV. If you've ever heard that song, I think it's off their album 13. I really love that song. Of course, Blur has Song 2, their famous song. And they had Park Life, they had Boys and Girls. But their song, Boys Will Be Boys, yeah, that song. But their song, Coffee and TV, is like brilliant, especially the video. The video is so sad, right? Yeah, Damon Albarn continues to be important and relevant. But the song Beetlebum is interesting because if you didn't know this, it's one of the, I don't want to say great songs about, but it's one of the major drug use songs. This song is obviously about Damon Albarn's heroin use because at the time, Blur was making it big. All these guys, I mean, they all talk about it. They all talk about, like their life, why they fell apart. And it's like, okay, I remember like Noel Gallagher or something saying like, oh, you have, 5 guys in a band who are all on different drugs. And, they're being, they're attempting to control the band, like through the managers and through the, all this stuff. And then he made this comment recently. He said, like, can you imagine somebody telling, now he said they just tell somebody like Harry Styles, okay, you're going to wear a dress. And he just goes and does it. And of course, these guys are like, fuck off, right? But the song, this song, Beetlebum, he says, Beetlebum, what you've done, she's a gun. Now what you've done, Beetlebum, get nothing done. You, Beetlebum, get nothing done. Now what you've done, Beetlebum. Now what a Beetlebum is essentially, this is pretty weird. You may not know this, but Damon Albarn was addicted to smoking heroin. And so the beetle is like the shape of the, like when he would put it on like tinfoil or whatever, and like when they smoke it and like it trails across the tinfoil and it looks like a beetle. And that the beetle like making shapes in the tinfoil because you light it and then they smoke it and then it like it trails and it leaves like a black trail as it burns. And that ties in with like the idea of him like wasting his life chasing this beetle that he's created, that it's like just trailing across the tinfoil, and it's like he sees that as his life, right? And he just becomes this bum. He just becomes this like piece of shit, just trailing, watching his own life burn in a sense. And I think that's that's a pretty powerful metaphor for drug use, I guess. The analysis on here says the lyrics become ambiguous, almost erotic. She'll suck your thumb, she'll make you. Oh, okay, I'm not going to read that part. But like everything with such a level of intensity, it ends and it is too late to prevent the consequences. With his evocative kind of writing, every Auburn's phrase, however simple, seems to be chosen as the most suitable one to represent worlds and induce sensations. That's vague. That's bullshit compared to our analysis, isn't it? The suffering of the ending, the failure to resist the temptation, followed by the urge to start again. Now that's relevant, and that's important in the song. The thrill disappears in order to give space to a gloomy reflection. Whether it's love or a dose, every story comes to an end. And that actually ties in with the expense of spirit and a waste of shame. It's the same motif. It's really the motif of chasing your base passions, right? Which leads to this kind of spiritual death in these people, or in the speakers within these songs. It says he was in love with what's her name, Justine, the girl from Elastica, I think. In the video, Auburn sings gloomy with his crooner silky voice, his gaze almost fixed at the camera because he's doped up, right? Then some shots of Alex James, always with a cigarette between his fingers, and Graham Coxon, cigarette, melancholically playing guitar. Coxon's alcoholism was apparently the main cause of the band's breakup, as well as extremely difficult moments during the recording of 13. Coffee and TV describes the experience. And then he says, Justine and Damon split in 1998, both starting a detox process. They were both junkies, of course. Laying an addiction is laying a lover whose danger has crossed the threshold of fascination. The relationship must be interrupted because of its self-destructive power. Blur was the flagship band, along with the rivals Oasis of the 90s Britpop scene. Auburn's melodic aptitude combined with Coxon's indie devotion gave rise to unforgettable albums such as Blur and 13 and Park Life, right? 23 years later, let us remember how these, even the most tenacious plot of darkness, the one and only drug it's worth being addicted to. Okay, whatever. All right. And then finally, I thought I would get to my last one here, my last analysis here, which is the Ian Brown song "Little Seed, Big Tree." Now, shouts out to everybody out there. Shouts out to former Ghost. Good to see you out there, former Ghost. Shouts out to former Ghost, Countess, Jeth, Maddie. Shouts out to all our homeboys out there, Expo, OK, Nateski, Mixki, Technomart Graphics. Shouts out to TGF, The Green Feathers, Church of the Eternal Logos, Tristan Haggard at Primal Edge Health. Shouts out to Jay Dyer at Jay's Analysis, all our homies. Okay. Also, shouts out to Jack. Shouts out to Devin, David. Shouts out to Jason. And who else? Shouts out to Penny. Shouts out to all our homies out there. Okay. So, Ian Brown. Ian Brown's song Little Seed, Big Tree, which I described at the beginning. You may not have heard this song because when it came out in the summer of 2020, and the song was heavily suppressed. It is a protest song, and not a protest song in the kind that we don't like. This is a protest song in the kind that you're gonna kind of get a kick out of. And a lot of these songs, of course, if you ever watch Revenge of the Sis, if you ever watch Mersh and Royce, they cover a lot of these cringe protest songs. This one I would say is different because number one, it was suppressed. It was taken down by SPOTIFY and by all the services. In fact, it may be a little dangerous to, it certainly would be to play the song. but we're just going to read the lyrics here. Now, the song has a lot of spicy content in terms of the algorithm. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to, use code and change a lot of the words, but you're going to get a kick out of this song. It's called Little Seed, Big Tree by Ian Brown. Ian Brown was the singer for the Stone Roses. And it starts off, he says, just a little seed makes a big tree, standing on its own, thriving all alone. Just a little seed makes a big tree, grows so high, gonna touch the sky. Just a little seed makes a big tree, spreads roots deep, branches far and wide. Here we go. Masonic lockdown in your hometown. Masonic lockdown, can you hear me now? From the top down, soul shot down, state shakedown, mass breakdown. Global orders, riding over borders. Get behind your doors for the new world, you know what? He says, Dr. Evil and his needle. Dr. Evil with a master plan. A forced, let's say, stabby, like a bad dream. They'll plant a micro CHIP, every woman, child, and man. They plan to CHIP us all to have complete control, the land, the sky, your soul. Peace like silence in the snow, free to do exactly as you're told, obey, consume, and die, and up to the heaven for your pie up in the sky. You see this song? Sleepwalking, dreaming, you best believe your lying eyes. Geoengineering, making more than patterns in the skies. 5G radiation, beamed to Earth from space by satellites. The scientist and his mediatrist trying to tell me 2 and 2 is 5. Excuse me while I mention the strategy of tension. Mass mind manipulation, psychological operation, the general population hypnotized right in front of your eyes. Drama and lies, look into my eyes. Just a little seed makes a big tree, standing on its own, thriving all alone. Just a little seed makes a big tree, grows so high, gonna touch the sky. Spreads roots deep, branches far and wide. Masonic lockdown in your hometown. Masonic lockdown, can you feel me now? Masonic lockdown, soul shot down, state shakedown, a mass breakdown. Put your muzzle on. Get back in your basket. Get behind your doors, because living here is drastic. Dr. Evil and his needle. Pretty fucking based, right? Can you believe this song? I mean, it's you can see it's almost too much, right? In fact, there are a bunch of articles from total beta fucking, there's one here that says this is a review of the song from Clash magazine. Ian Brown's song is genuinely appalling, it says, right? It's disgusting, and it is DISINFO. Absolute entry-level local boozer open mic nonsense. It's appalling to see Ian Brown in such shape. Like watching a prize fighter enter the ring 5 stone overweight, chain smoking and chugging a bottle of Carlsberg on the way. Fuck off. Right? This song is too base for you. He's right. There are a bunch of these articles. They totally shut down the song, right? And I would recommend that you check it out. So, of course, he has the MASONIC references in here, saying that it is an NWO, right? And a group of elites, right, that caused the thing that's happening. He mentions Dr. Flossie a number of times in the song. He also hits on the... It's interesting because he literally mentions the stabby by name in this. And then how everyone is going to be RFID'd and Neuralinked with the GRAPHENE. That, of course, is the seed, right? It's the seed that grows the big tree of this sort of Gnostic Luciferian new Gnostic Eden that he's talking about, which is what they want. Obey, consume. He even mentions consume, right? He mentions sort of a shepherd fairy or meme obey mixed with uh, what's they live, right, with they live imagery. And he says, I mean, it's interesting because the contradictions in the song, right? You best believe your lying eyes. That's a they live reference. And it's also the contradiction that's inherent in the system now. He then goes on to mention heart machines and CHEM trails, telling me 2 and 2 is 5. He's got a sort of a quasi 1984 reference. He mentions by name the Globalist book series and the Strategy of Tension, Full Spectrum Dominance, and Gladio. Strategy of Tension is Daniel Glazer's 2004 book, which Jay has talked about, right? And the NATO Secret Army with the Gladio operations, and Licio Gelli. He talks about how it's a psyop, and put your MUZZLE on, because and remember, Ian Brown at the time was, I mean, he's pretty based, right? He literally said, he wasn't going to play concerts where, this is great. And of course, they were all too happy to, tell him, don't worry about it, don't come, because they didn't want him anymore. But he took a stand and took a big hit, and I guess you can respect that, right? So that is Ian Brown's Little Seed, Big Tree. And that is I guess that will conclude pretty much our Britpop stream here, right? So that was a good little side note, right, into our music analysis. You probably want to see more Smith's analysis than that. But I just picked those songs because I thought that would be a good, pretty cursory. I had a pretty cursory analysis of the Smiths and their lyrics, but I thought that it was worth diving into. So again, we've done a couple of music analysis streams here. We did. We started with Zeppelin, then we did Metallica and Johnny Got His Gun, and now we've done Smiths and Britpop. Let's see if we got any super chats here. Let's see. How's everybody doing out there in the chat? I haven't really been looking. Yo, shouts out to Maddie again. Let's see. He sent me $7.50 and he asked me a question on Insta. And he says, have you heard the Gorilla song Hong Kong? It's a pretty interesting commentary on what's been happening in that part of the world. Is that a newer one? I don't remember that. I mean, I've got all the Gorillaz albums up until their latest one. I had Plastic Beach, and I have what's the one that they made? They made one on the road on a Korg synthesizer. Damon Albarn made it. And then I had, of course, Demon Days is a brilliant album. Demon Days and the Gorillaz self-titled album with Clint Eastwood, right, and Dirty Harry. But I haven't heard that one. I got to check it out. So thank you for that, Maddie. Really appreciate that. Let's see. Thank you for that $7.50. Let's see. We got super chat, $10 from our homeboy Thomas Henderson. Thank you, Thomas Henderson. Always appreciate you out there. Love you, homeboy. Thank you from Thomas Totten. For $5, he says, for Morris, he's so annoying, LOL. Thank you for that, homeboy. Really appreciate that $5. Thank you so much. Shouts out to, wow, $20 from Andrew Turner. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Shouts out to Andrew Turner out there. And I think that will do it for the super chats for tonight. So again, thank you to Andrew Turner, Thomas Totten. Thank you to Maddie, Real Cooter Brown. Shouts out to Thomas Henderson for $5. Let's see. I think one just came through. Let's see. Oh, $5. We got $5 from. Let's see here. We got $5 from Alan McIntyre. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Alan McIntyre, for that $5 via PayPal. Really appreciate you. Thank you to everybody out there who supported me. I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for your generous donations. I love you all. We will be back soon. I'm not sure what our next stream is going to be. Maybe it'll be the Countess Catcher in the Rye, or it'll be the Jack sponsor stream, which is Mark Twain, Prince and the Pauper. Probably do those first, unless we get some shorter material. And then we're going to be diving into our Hollywood animals stream with the Joe Esterhazy book, Hollywood Animal, and the Don Simpson book, High Concept, Don Simpson. And we'll be talking about the Don Simpson films and the interview between Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson, where they discuss. Hopefully we can play it. I don't know if we can play it. We might get, it might be taken down if we play it. But we'll look into that. And talking about Crimson Tide and Top Gun. Because of course, again, that's the interview where they say, we read a lot of books and watch a lot of TV, and the universe just sort of breathes to you, And we thought, where else would we want to see? Who else would be making movies about guys on submarines? Nobody was doing this. So we decided, you know what, we're going to do it. It's like totally ridiculous. But these guys knew how to make movies, and we're going to be going into the absolutely decadent life of Don Simpson. And we'll see what Joe Esterhazy has to say, especially about Basic Instinct. So that's about it. Thank you again to everybody who supported me, all the super chatters out there. Thanks to all my mods and all my beautiful friends out there. And that's about all I got. So I love y'all. Hope you have a good rest of the week. And please remember to leave a comment after this is over. Please smash that like. Hit that sub button. Help me to get up to 1,000 subs. I'm trying to get up there. I'm trying to do some big things. Okay? And I love y'all. That's about it. All right, y'all. Peace. Hope you